In this video, I'm going to talk about what it's like dating those notorious Gemini men. Gemini men are some of the most interesting, fun, fascinating people. They can be the life of the party. They are going to show you a good time. Regardless of everything else, that's usually true. If you're someone that just feels incredibly bored or has felt bored in your relationships and you just want something new for a change, you can guarantee that in dating a Gemini man, it's gonna be different. It's gonna be fun. He's gonna push you outside of your comfort zone. You may leave horribly regretful, wishing you never met them. Maybe you're gonna be in therapy for like the next 4 or 5 months, but at least you would have had a good time. If you're just starting to talk to a Gemini man for the first time, starting to date, starting to get to know each other, you have to know right away that Gemini man is always kind of constantly in motion. He has a million different irons in the fire. He has this childlike curiosity about a lot of different things. He'll pick something up or pick up a hobby or a toy, or maybe it's a particular place in town or particular friends that he likes to hang out with. And he's like gonna be all about it. And then he's gonna get distracted and then he'll be interested in something else. And he's always kind of someone that has a lot going on. If you're struggling to make a date with this person, or you feel like their schedule is just like insanely busy, that's kind of normal, right? It's something to sort of be expected. If they like you, they will start making more time for you, or they'll start asking you to kind of tag along for some of these things, but they're usually, they're not lying when they say they're busy. They just have a lot going on. Gemini men appreciate novelty. They definitely enjoy the process of a courtship or talking to someone they like, right? They love talking, they love words, they love jokes, right? They typically are the type of person to send you memes. They're incredibly funny and clever, and your interaction and your initial engagement with them, whether it's your first conversations or you're texting in between dates, it's gonna be like so fun and lighthearted and funny, and it just is like very high energy and it feels good. This is something that a Gemini man is great at. He's rarely short on conversation topics. It's always like the next thing he just heard from like his buddy Fred. Oh, guess what I heard about this like new theory of science that just came out? Like, let me tell you all about it. Or, yo, did you know this girl like Becky? She lives like 5 neighborhoods down. I don't really know her. You probably don't know her, but like she just gave birth to a baby that has like a dragon head. Isn't that crazy? Geminis like love talking. They can be a little bit gossipy. It's just always that kind of energy. To get to the essence truly though of a Gemini man, let's talk a little bit about the symbol, the glyph for Gemini. It's the twins. And so in some ways Gemini, all Geminis, but we're talking about Gemini male, these are like two different people or two different modes of being inside of him that are always kind of popping up and then hiding, right? There's one that's more visible than the other, and it's almost like kind of this alternating cycle where there's this one kind of person and then there's this other kind of person. This doesn't mean that they're like bipolar or schizophrenic or like anything, to the DSM level seriousness. Who are these two different people inside a Gemini man? It's not static, it's always dynamic, but it's the Gemini man experiencing the polarity of opposites. Other signs in the zodiac go through the same kind of existential, thoughtful cycles that Gemini does. Water signs go through these intense, emotional circles and cycles where they consider like many different perspectives, or they are very sad about something and heartbroken before they come back on the other side of it and now see it as like something kind of beautiful or see some sort of silver lining. With Gemini men, right, it's more like they have to play the role of each and actually act them out in real life. Maybe that's partially because, they're not always so great at emotionally reflecting or being, self-aware. So they act it out and they kind of have to just like see the consequences. But it's challenging for other people, right? That can make them very hot and cold. Whereas when some other signs are kind of more in poor moods and it's more just kind of internal, they might be in a bad mood, but it's more managed and regulated, right? Where Gemini men, it's kind of like, sometimes they're a totally different person. It's also been said that Gemini men also sometimes sort of struggle with, integrating the masculine and female parts of themselves. We all have masculine and female parts of us, right? It doesn't matter what we identify with. It doesn't matter what our biological sex is. That with Gemini men, there's almost a little bit more of a tension or a lack of resolution between those two parts of themselves. Like they're not completely comfortable with integrating these male and female parts of them in sort of a consistent way. You know, sometimes there's sort of some implications with sexuality along with that. That's all I'm gonna say on that for now. It's just kind of food for thought. But this tendency to be kind of hot and cold is a little bit of a theme throughout Geminis. Your Gemini man might be like so incredibly enthusiastic and fun in the life of the party, like one night, wants to bring you along, like shows you a great time. And then like the next day, he's just like kind of broody, not very talkative, kind of wants to do his own thing, you know, is now like kind of focused on other things. And when you try to get him to like talk about it, he doesn't want to talk about it. And especially if he's in one of that like more broody modes, he might be a little bit like snippy. See, Geminis have so many different interests in life. They like to be kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. And like interestingly, in one of their greatest gifts, right, is their ability to find the relationships and the patterns between all these like seemingly separate things. They can create ways of structuring information and see patterns and see relationships that other people can't see. Now, interestingly, what's going on inside them is also this process of them trying to bridge a gap and find a relationship between multiple things, right? It's these two different kind of parts of themselves. The lifelong soul mission of a Gemini is being able to integrate those parts a little bit more fully, or at least more consistently. A Gemini male is always like a walking contradiction, because he'll just go on and on and on about a certain issue, or maybe he'll be upset at something that you did, like, oh, you went out and you like stayed out later than, you know, you both agreed to, whatever, and he's upset about that. But then like he'll turn around and maybe do like something very similar, and he has no ability to kind of see how it's similar, right? He'll just be like, he'll make a joke and just like play it off and move on, downplay the seriousness, downplay the emotionality. But like you're left wondering, like, does he realize like how obviously similar these two situations were? And you're left like, wow, maybe he actually doesn't. This is one of Gemini man's shadow side. They project so much of their energy outward and into the external world that they have a really bad, especially for an air sign, ability to really reflect and really see the patterns inside of themselves, to kind of come to some greater maturity or wisdom through that reflection. Gemini men are also not truly all that comfortable with emotions or expressing emotions. Big, grand, romantic gestures that are full of like soppy and heartfelt words, and that's not really them, or that's not natural for them. You usually won't get that from a Gemini male. They're more about like taking you out and doing things and showing you a fun time and making you laugh and all that stuff, right? But when it comes down to an actually like emotionally significant situation, whether that's an emotional fight, a conflict, or they're genuinely trying to respond to something very emotionally intense that you express to them, they're usually going to make some kind of a joke about it. Like they are gonna express it or agree with it, but they're gonna do it in a joking kind of way. They cannot do it in a way that's just 100% serious and vulnerable and bare. It's just not their style, and they're uncomfortable with it. Gemini men usually need a very long leash, a high need for independence. They need to, like a child, like be able to go out the front door or the back door and play, and they're not gonna be able to tell you like, oh, this is exactly what I'm gonna do. Like, imagine asking like a kid who's going out to play for the summer, like what they're gonna do every moment of the whole day. Kid's like, I don't know, like we're gonna ride bikes here and play baseball here and then gonna see how the day develops. It's kind of the same thing with like a Gemini male, and it makes them fun, except like when you don't hear from them for like a day and a half and they come back drunk and like, what the hell is going on? Having said that, I think sometimes people overestimate their lack of loyalty because of that need for independence. They do have strong morals. They do have a strong sense of fairness. So they're not intentionally going out there to be deceptive. They're not evil. They're not going to lie just as a natural course, at least as a generality. This always depends on the maturity level and, the personality of the person, Usually infidelity by a Gemini man, if there is any, is usually like the culmination of a lot of conflict in the relationship that's not really resolved. Like in a normal situation, if that Gemini man was gone all day, you had no idea where he was, and you're like, what the hell, like where were you? And like he doesn't answer the question very well just because there's so many different things that he was doing, and he knows there's a million answers to that question, and like just doesn't want to go into all of it. bit. And then that might, for you, like trigger a sense of worry or emotional reactions or concern, which the Gemini man is not generally good at like responding to. And so it's these kind of things when the Gemini energy is not a great fit for the other partner, that there can be conflict because that conflict kind of never really gets resolved, right? Or if it never gets resolved, then, you know, you kind of see things continue to snowball, right? And then Gemini man can start to feel boxed in just by that intense emotional conflict, or just, you know, the weight or the wet blanket nature of what's going on, which he's partially responsible for not being able to kind of help resolve. Not that they're inherently doing anything wrong by going out, but it just sometimes that lack of emotional communication just snowballs. And at this point, you know, that's when Gemini man might feel so boxed in by all of that he might go off and do something that it's going to damage the relationship. He's going to go off. He's no longer feeling like he has to obey some sort of moral code or ethical code within the relationship because things have become soured. That's not a great situation, but that's just one example of sometimes how that issue may come up. Gemini men typically go for signs and women that are actually a lot more emotional than he is. It's a way to kind of get that balance and to sort of receive that for himself because he's not producing it for himself. And you know, sometimes these can spell trouble, right? Because a sign like Pisces or Cancer or Scorpio have such intense emotional needs, and they want a strong bond and they want consistency and predictability, and the Gemini energy can be a little bit upsetting to them. Like they love how much excitement and novelty and talent, and you know, they love the mind of the Gemini man. So there's a lot of attraction there and they want to love him, but it's just like hard because those two signs want different things. Longer term, if a Gemini man is able to meet more of the emotional person more halfway, things can actually go pretty well. And this can be like a great relationship, right? But he's got to be able to do some self-reflection. He's got to be able to do some of the emotionally intelligent work in the relationship. It can't all be some other person. And he's got to take certain things seriously. Like it can't always all be a joke. On the other hand, you know, a more watery type of partner also has to understand that just because they're giving Gemini a little bit of a rope doesn't mean that he's not totally committed to the relationship. You know, they have to understand that Gemini processes things differently. He's a little bit less comfortable with that emotional energy, and they have to be secure in that, which may or may not be a challenge for them. Bottom line is a relationship with this type of man, Gemini man, can be extremely fun. Like I said at the top, very interesting, so enriching. It's gonna pull you outside of your comfort zone. It's just gonna be such an enjoyable experience. And there's so much here that, you know, more than makes up for some of the challenges I've talked about. I feel like a lot of this video has been mostly challenges, but hopefully at least arms you a little bit better if you are dating or with a Gemini man. And I do think that you need to be honest about whether or not some of the things I discussed are things that you want to manage or deal with as growth points in the relationship. Lastly, as always, this is a bit of a generalization, right? You have to look at not only whole natal charts, synastry charts, composite charts, aspects, you know, full analysis, but you also have to take a step back from astrology and remember that, you know, people have an internal locus of control. So always ask yourself, you know, are you with someone that seems to be aligned with where you want to go? Does this person have a growth mindset? Is this person either mature or working towards it or learning from their mistakes? Those are all good questions to ask yourself, you know, when you're thinking about these kind of things. That's it for now. Thanks for watching.